Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful, creepy little human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's Morbid makeup video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow, in all of this craziness, today you and I were able to find each other on this crazy planet that we call home. My name is Brittany, or BRATTERSTEIN, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the Dorado Jane Doe. And yes, it's El Dorado, not El Dorado. I looked into it, and in Arkansas, they say El Dorado. So the Dorado Jane Doe is a woman who was murdered back in 1991. Her murder was solved. Her killer was her ex-boyfriend. He was caught. He was put in jail right away. But after 30 years, it is now 2021, the identity of the Dorado Jane Doe has still not been uncovered. No one knows who this woman is after all this time. I'm sorry, what? But before we get started on the whole story, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell, because I put out a new Morbid makeup video every single week and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, so join us and become one of us. One of us. One of us. One of us. So now that I'm done basically begging you to be my friend, let's get into the video. So this is actually going to be my first Jane Doe case. I don't typically, if you saw my Q&A you would know this, I don't typically do unsolved cases. They're not my favorite, but my friend suggested this case to me. Hi, Ryan. And when I started looking into it, I was like, wait a minute, because it is sort of unsolved, but it is also solved. So it got my wheels turning. Because this isn't a whodunit. We know whodunit. It was her boyfriend, right? And he was already put in jail. He actually already got out of jail for it, spoiler alert. And the fact that it's been 30 years and no one knows who she is, like no one's come forward from her childhood years, her family, friends, no one who went to school with her has come forward. She's just sat there unclaimed for 30 years. And we have photos of her. There's a bunch of people in her older years who knew her and just didn't really know who she was. Like, there's a lot. There's a lot. So I fell into a hole, a big hole. And this the issue with unsolved cases or things that are shrouded in mystery is the hole is never ending. There's no bottom to this hole, and I can just go and go and go down all the threads and all the articles and all the Reddit threads. It's a lot. And since I found it so interesting, I thought you guys would want to hear about it. So this video. So come, gather around and let me tell you the story of the Dorado Jane Doe. Okay, let's jump in our handy dandy time machine and head to El Dorado, Arkansas on July 10th, 1991, when a frantic call came into 911 from a woman named Andrea saying that her friend had just been shot. Police arrive at the Whitehall Motel and they head over to room 121, and when they enter, they find a young woman dead on the floor. She appeared to have been beaten, she had a broken neck, and she had been shot once in the head. It didn't take police long to figure out who had killed this woman, because the murder was not discreet at all. At the Whitehall Motel, there had been several witnesses who had seen the couple, the woman and her boyfriend at the time, a man named James McAlpin, they had been fighting outside their hotel room in public view. He had even been seen hitting her, and then he was seen ripping her forcibly into their hotel room right before she was killed. So all of this happened very quickly, and then he was seen taken off on foot with the gun. So it's pretty obvious it was him. So he was quickly tracked down, he was arrested, and he was charged with first-degree murder. In searching the motel room where she was killed, and also in searching her herself, the police found that she had an ID on her with the name Cheryl Ann Wick, so police started looking into finding her family so that they could notify next of kin of her murder. Police were able to find Cheryl Ann Wick's family, and they were living in Minnesota at the time, so police had to go through with the, unpleasant task of informing her parents that she had been tragically murdered in Arkansas. So police informed Cheryl Ann Wick's parents that she had tragically been shot to death in Arkansas, and their response wasn't a typical response of parents who had just learned that their daughter had been murdered. They seemed shocked and surprised, but they were like, our daughter's not in Arkansas. We've recently spoken to her at her home, and she is not in Arkansas. And then Cheryl Ann's sister went ahead and called Cheryl's phone and was like, hello? And who was to answer? Cheryl Ann Wick. And this poor girl's sister was hysterical, right? She had just heard that her sister was dead, so she called, like, freaking out, and gets her sister on the phone, and her sister's like, nah, dog, I'm chilling, not dead, hanging out, hella alive. And so the family gives police Cheryl Ann Wick's phone number, and they talk to her, and yeah, dude, she's definitely alive. So even though this dead woman had an ID on her with her photo and the name Cheryl Ann Wick and had a social security card with the same name, this is the identity she was living under, she was not in fact Cheryl Ann Wick. This was a stolen identity. So from that moment on, she was given the name the Dorado Jane Doe. From this moment on, I'm going to actually refer to her as JD for a couple of reasons. One, JD's a really cute nickname, and she sort of looks like a JD. And two, if I say the Dorado Jane Doe every single time I refer to her, I'm going to say it about 1,000 times, and that's going to get very old. So, JD. So police are trying to figure out like how she has this woman's identity, and they speak to the real Cheryl Ann Wick, and Cheryl's like, listen, I keep my freaking social security card in my purse all the time, even though I know I shouldn't. I do the same thing. I know that I shouldn't. And you know, I didn't even realize it was gone until you guys were like, hey, are you murdered? So she says that at some point, it must have been stolen from her. The last time she saw it is when she was working as a dancer. So it seems like JD had been living under this woman's identity for quite some time and had just gone unnoticed. So police are like, okay, and they go to James McAlpin, which is the name of JD's boyfriend who tragically murdered her. And they're like, yo, who is your girlfriend? Like, who is this person? Because we looked into it and she's not Cheryl Ann Wick. And he said that she had introduced herself to him as Mercedes. He knew her as Mercedes, and she was a sex worker, and he was not only her boyfriend, but he was also her pimp. He said that prior to her working for him, she had been working with a couple other men, a couple other pimps, and eventually she met James, and the two of them were first dating for about a year, and then that turned into her working for him as his sex worker. So while JD and James were working together, he wasn't like a nice dude to her, as I'm sure you can imagine. I haven't heard of many stories where like a pimp was like a chill dude. I don't know a lot of pimp stories, I guess, but he often beat her physically, and he put her in the hospital a couple of times, and eventually she did get the nerve to leave him. She ran off, moved out, and she moved in with a friend of hers named Andrea, who she had met at some club. I don't know if she was working at the club or just hanging out at the club, but that's where they met. And she was living with Andrea, just trying to get away from him, have a safety net, and kind of like save herself from the situation she was in. And he often called her and begged for her to come back, and she was always like, no, 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 you are abusive, get away from me, sir. She had told Andrea that she was worried that James would kill her, which is so sad that she had that in the back of her head, and that's what ended up happening. She said that she was seeing a new man and that she knew that James wouldn't like that, and she always resisted him until the day she didn't. One night, James was able to finally convince JD to go visit him with the promise of money. He said he'd give her some money, and she needed some money, so she went over and met him at the Whitehall Motel. And this is a motel that's now been torn down, but when it existed, it was one of those like shady spots. You know, the ones with lots of drugs, rent by the hour sort of vibe. You know the vibe. And this is where she would unfortunately end up being murdered. So apparently what had happened that day, the last day of JD's life, is he called her to go over. She went over and she met him at the hotel, and they were fighting inside their room pretty loudly. They had been fighting outside the room, and then he pulled her inside. They were fighting inside of the room, and then there was a guy staying at the motel who James knew. So I assume like this, you know, local hangout for really cool dudes. And so he had come over to James's room because apparently James had something of his, I think it was cassette tapes, and he wanted them back. So he knocks on the door. JD opens the door, and she talks to him for a second. She's like, you know what? You need to talk to your boy. He's acting crazy. And at this moment, JD tried to leave the room. She tried to step out. She stepped out into like the parking lot, because it wasn't like a big hotel with like hallways and stuff. It was like a little shitty one with outdoor areas. So you walk out and you're in the parking lot. So she walked out, and James grabbed her, hit her, forcibly threw her back in the room. The friend who was at the door was like, gotta go, not my problem, right? But he could hear from the outside what was happening, and the door closed, and there was yelling for just a moment, and then a loud gunshot, followed by just eerie silence. Many witnesses, though, had seen what happened, saw him run from the scene with the gun, so he was quickly arrested. He was charged with first-degree murder, but then he took a plea deal for second-degree murder and was given only 15 years for murdering a woman. Of course he was. And if that's not already irritating, he ended up getting out after serving only 13 years. And this guy was just like an overall piece of shit, because after that he ended up getting arrested again for another domestic battery charge. So I believe he's in jail now. I think he's in jail now. Either way, he was in and out of jail a lot, and maybe if we had just kept him in for like the first murder, then maybe this wouldn't be a problem, but I am not a professional. Now, if I didn't annoy you enough already, let me just me just annoy you a little further. So this guy, this asshole who murdered this woman, then goes on to say, like, he didn't do it. I know you saw me run off and everyone heard it, but like, she shot herself. She took my gun and she killed herself. Okay, James. This seems pretty unlikely since one, she was shot in the back of the head from what I read. She was beaten. She had a broken neck. You were seen running with the gun. You were just an overall abusive dick. I just hate people like this, man. I think guys who beat women are just like giant pussies. And so I just don't like this guy. It's a pretty obvious statement, but I think he sucks. So since police had no idea who this woman was and they didn't find that James's account of her life was particularly helpful in determining her actual name, they started looking at the possessions she had to try to get some, you know, insight into who this person was. So they find in her belongings that had been in the hotel, no, not in the hotel, that had been at Andrea's house, that she had food menus from both Texas and Virginia. She also had a diary in it, which they looked all through it, and they didn't find anything concrete that was helpful in determining who she was, but they did find on her a Bible. And inside the Bible, it had the last name Stroud, and inside, you know, the cover, it had names of people in that family with all the last name Stroud. Yes. So police start trying to find the Stroud family because they assume, okay, maybe this is who she really is. Maybe she kept this Bible as like a remembrance, a token of her previous life. And maybe this is like the one thing we have that is, you know, sentimental. People love God, right? People love God. And so they go and they find this family. And at the time they are living in Houston, Texas. And they're like, hey, we found this Bible. And this is the girl, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, okay. Well, she's not related to us, but we did have a girl who stayed with us for a time named Cheryl Ann Wick. Cheryl Ann Wick. They said that she had told them that she was a runaway from Texas originally, and she had lived in Minnesota for a time before ending up in Texas where she met them. Now, I didn't see if she had stolen this Bible from them or if they had given it to her. I can't see them giving it to her just because it sounds like a family heirloom with all the names in it and stuff, but she had this Bible, and now they had a little more of her backstory, even though she told a lot of people a lot of different stories about her and her life prior to them meeting her. So now they've heard the name Cheryl Ann Wick twice, they've heard the name Mercedes at least twice, so they're like, okay, who is this chick? And in looking into her further, talking, you know, following every little rabbit trail that they could into this woman, they found that she had gone under a lot of different names. Throughout her years, along with the names Cheryl Ann Wick and Mercedes, she had also went by the name Kelly Carr, Shannon Wiley, Sharon Wiley, and Cheryl Kaufman. But in looking into each name, police were able to determine that none of these were her actual legal name. In addition to her many different names, it appeared that she had also spent a lot of time traveling all over the US, primarily in the East Coast, but also in Texas. And her first verified appearance in the world was in Texas. And while in Texas, she had worked at a KFC, and she had also been arrested for prostitution. So apparently JD had been arrested using several of her different aliases a number of times. She had been arrested at least twice for prostitution and at least once for writing bad checks. And through all of her known aliases, police were able to, you know, connect all of her crimes to her, and they were able to sort of track her movements. And the FBI even had her on their radar for a string of bank robberies in the East Coast. Who was this chick, dude? All the people that police interviewed that knew JD throughout her life all seemed to have a different account of who she was growing up and who she was as a person. Her friend Andrea, the one who she was living with and the one who actually called the police when she was murdered, she was under the impression that JD was a stripper from out of town and that she had 2 children. This is what JD told her, that she had 2 children and both of these children lived with her mother, but her and her mother were not on good terms because her mother was like not down with the sickness of JD's life and her lifestyle, so she didn't let her see her kids, but that JD worked super hard and all the money that she ever got she sent back to these kids. She told other people that she was in the witness protection program because her father had been in the mafia, and she told other people still that she had been working with a pimp and his friend, a couple pimps, and what they would do is they would go to truck stops and she would be used as a lure, and she would kind of like flirt with the truckers to get them to let their guards down, and then her pimps and pimp friends, all the people she was chilling with, would then rob the truckers while their guards were down, right? And she said in one of these instances, they actually even killed a man. Now, there does seem to actually be an unsolved murder case that could be a very good match for the story that JD told people about the trucker that was killed when being like lured by her for her pimps. In November of 1988, a 27-year-old man and father of two named Dwayne McCorkindale, who was a truck driver, was at a rest stop and he was heading to a payphone to make a call when he was shot to death. Apparently, witnesses described the suspects as a white man, a black man, and a white female who checked his pockets and robbed him of the minimum money he had on him at the time. It was around $20. Police followed this lead and did think it was connected, and from what I read, it still seems like they kind of think it could be connected, but they couldn't find any proof, so they just gotta kind of like be like, okay, well, which is really sad because that guy's case isn't solved, and like he was a father and had a wife and stuff, and that's really, really sad. Unsolved cases are so sad to me. But since it's never been proven that she was connected, it is just speculation. So police did everything they could to try to identify this woman. They followed every single lead they got, even though all the leads inevitably led to a dead end. And they talked to everyone that they could track down who had known her in life. And every person seemed to have a different idea of who she was, and none of them were accurate. So police were just like they didn't know what they could do to figure out who this person was. So while all this is happening, Mr. James McAlpin starts talking a little bit. I don't know if he was bored or what the deal was, but he was like, you know what? Her identity is not a mystery to me. I know exactly who she is. But it's believed that either he's lying or that the information he has is just false information, because I mean, JD lied to every single person in her life. So what are the odds that she would tell this abusive dick the truth, you know? But he did say that he would give this information over to police for money. Surprise, surprise. He wanted some money. He wanted a whopping $4,000. Okay. And police were like, you know, but he did say, and this is what interested police a little bit, that the information he had would not only solve the mystery of the Dorado Jane Doe, no, but it would also solve some other cold cases that officers may have had on their desk for a while. Intriguing. One of these cold cases that James McAlpin said would be solved, or that he alluded to being solved, was the one of Dwayne McCorkindale. He implied heavily that this was one of the cold cases that would be solved with the, you know, real identity of JD, but he then went on later to recant this and say, no, that's not the one I was talking about. But at one point he did say that this one would be solved if he gave over her real identity. Now, he did end up talking a little bit, and what he said is wild, and there's no way to know if it's actually true. He said that JD had been on the street since she was 16 years old, and that while out on the streets, she met an older man who she fell in love with, and he essentially groomed her from that young age, and after making her fall in love with him, he put her into a sex trafficking ring in Dallas, Texas. He said that in this sex trafficking ring, the people would kidnap the girls, put them into the trafficking thing, and some of the girls would end up getting sent to Mexico. James said that while JD was caught up in this whole sex trafficking thing, that she met 3 other girls who were also being forced to do this sort of work. He said that in Texas, JD had met Mary Rachel Trelica, Renee Wilson, and Julie Ann Mosley, more popularly known in the true crime community as the Fort Worth Trio. These were 3 girls that went missing back in December of 1974 from a shopping center in Fort Worth, Texas, and to this day have never been seen again. He said that JD had gotten very close to these girls due to the mutual sexual abuse they were experiencing together, and that at least one of the girls has died. Now, is this true? We don't know. There should still be hope held out for those 3 girls. James says that it was through this work that he eventually met JD, and that the 2 ran away together, and you know, that's when they started dating, and then she worked for him. And he said that while they were close, she had told him that the reason that she changed her name and was hiding her identity is because the people who she had back home, her family, would be ashamed of the work that she was in now. Because when she was younger, it was done against her will, but as an adult, she chose to continue doing it, and she was ashamed. He said that at the time he met JD, she was older than him, and he was 26 at the time that they met, and then he murdered her a year later, so that would probably put her, if this was true, close to 30 years old when she was murdered. He also said that JD had family in Texas and that he had actually met her mother in Texas. But this is all of the information that he would give without getting paid. Which, I mean, is a pretty good amount of information, but none of it is useful in actually determining who she is. Police don't put a lot of weight into his story and his accounts of JD's life, just simply because, one, we don't know his motives. We know he wanted money, which is already, like, makes you, raise an eyebrow. But also, JD lied to everyone she came in contact with, so there's a good chance that even what he knows isn't actually the truth. So, who knows, man? None of us, that's the point. Something interesting, though. James did say, also, that JD had shown him a photo of herself, and this photo was in a 1989 issue of the magazine Outlaw Biker, and that in the photo she was topless. Now I haven't seen if this has been looked into or if this has been confirmed, but if she was in an issue of this magazine, it kind of got that pinball thing going off in my head that it could be worth looking into. If somebody has a copy of this and looked at it and just kind of investigated that a little bit, it seems like if she was in it, which we don't even know what month she would have been in, but if she was in it, there could be a name for her listed. It may be an alias. It probably would be an alias, but there could be a name there. There could also be other people in the photo with her. It could have evidence that, like, you could look into where it was shot, right? Like where the picture was taken, if it was in a studio or like an official photo shoot, who was the photographer, who was there, because then there could be more people to talk to get more information. So that's just a thought. We don't even know if she was really in it, but if she was, that could be worth looking into. So if you have any 1989 issues of Outlaw Biker magazine, just kind of flip through it and see if you see a topless JD, respectfully. But who really knows if this is true? Because this guy is just like a piece of shit, honestly. Apparently prior to murdering JD, he was just like an abusive dick, period. He spent most of his adult life in prison. He was an abusive asshole who beat her and put her in the hospital and then murdered her and then had the audacity to say that she killed herself. And I guess even in prison, he's still getting into trouble, so I wouldn't put much stock into what he says. However, I feel like this magazine note is sort of too specific to make up. I'm sure that's, I don't know. It would just be such an elaborate and specific lie that it makes me think that maybe this could be true, but honestly, who really knows? But it's worth looking into. So police don't have a ton of information. They don't have her real name. They don't know who her family was. But there are some things about her that have been proven to be true. Through strands of JD's hair, police were able to determine that she was from America, and that in the last few years of her life she had traveled all over the country, spending some time in California, but the majority of her time was spent in both Texas and the East Coast in general. Police were able to determine that she was working as an exotic dancer in both Dallas, and this is where she met James, her murderer, and also in Arkansas. And this made sense because a lot of people who knew her said that she was very sweet, very, very kind, but she dressed a little scantily clad, little tiny shorts, little shirts, and that she always had like wads of money on her. Police were also able to determine that she has no affiliation that they could find to the mafia and that she was not in the witness protection program. At the time that she was murdered, she's thought to have been between the ages of 18 and 30, standing at about 5'10" and weighing about 160 pounds. At the time that she was killed, her hair looked to be a little shorter than it had been in most photos of her and was a sort of light brown color. It looked like she had dyed it strawberry blonde, but it had grown out a little bit. But in the majority of the photos that had been recovered of her, she had bleached blonde hair, so anyone who knew her may have known her like that. She had a small birthmark or scar under her left breast and a few small scars on her face. She was a freckly girl, lots of small freckles all over her face and body, sort of like the type of freckles that a natural redhead would have, little tortilla body. But in many photos, it looks like she wore foundation to cover them. She had 2 piercings in her left ear and 3 on her right, and she had pretty nice white teeth that were taken care of and a pretty smile. Now, we actually have a recent update, a exciting update, and a potentially promising update. So, JD was murdered in 1991, and now, 3 decades later, police have gotten their first big break in learning JD's true identity. JD's DNA ended up being shared with GEDmatch, and if that sounds familiar to you, you may have seen my Golden State Killer case. This is what was used to actually catch the Golden State Killer. So, they put JD's freaking DNA into this database, and they got a hit, dude. They got a hit. They found one of her family members. It was a woman named Christina Tilford who lived in Alabama. Now, they couldn't find her phone number, so they contacted her via Facebook, and they were like, hey, like, this is gonna sound crazy, but, you know, and they ended up getting in contact with her. And since finding this woman and getting in contact with this woman, they've also been able to identify other family members of JD. It turns out that Christina is the great-grandchild of JD's father's parents. It's very confusing, but that makes her JD's cousin. Apparently, Christina had just entered her DNA because she wanted to kind of like find out about her family, find out about other people that existed, but she had no idea she'd find anything like this. And she's looked at photos of JD and she says she doesn't recognize her, she doesn't know her, but that she can see the familial resemblance. And she says that what she thinks probably happened, which this is just her thoughts, is that JD was maybe born out of wedlock and that her father might not even know who she is, which is so crazy. Can you imagine this happening to you, finding out you have a cousin, and then think about the dad. If the dad is still alive, which I didn't find clarification on whether or not he was, he might not even know that she existed. That's crazy. So now we wait, and it's so frustrating because it's been 2 years, 2 freaking years, dude. Like, how long does it take to locate long lost family members? I don't know. I'm just really impatient because like I'm in it now. I don't usually get in these types of cases, and now I'm in it, and I want to know all the things, and I want to know all the things right this second. I do not have patience, okay? I need to know who her family was. I want to know about her upbringing, and I want to know why she was hiding her identity so extensively. So now I ask you, what do you think? I know that there is a lot to unpack here, and this hole that we are now in is never ending. That's the thing with these unsolved or Jane Doe cases, man. There is no end, and I need it. I need a definitive answer. I'm like the person who needs loose ends tied up. It's my Virgo moon, man. I don't know what to tell you. And it's so cool because it seems like we may actually know soon. This is one that may actually be solved, and that is such an exciting thing. And I know with GEDmatch, there is a lot of controversy around this type of technology. I know that. Like, people had an issue with the Golden State Killer being caught the way he was because he never put his DNA in the database, so he shouldn't be able to be traced that way. I get all that. I don't know if I agree, but I understand. Now with this, I feel like we can all agree that this is this type of technology being used correctly and being used in a way that's going to be very beneficial in a lot of ways. There are just so many questions, you know, like besides the obvious, like who is she, but why was she hiding who she was so badly? Was she running from something? Was she running from someone? Or was she just trying to like keep her identity a secret because she was doing a lot of illegal shit and she wanted to make her crimes less like connectable, you know? Give a different name each time, they won't be able to trace you. And what was her backstory? How much of what she told people was true? Did she have kids? I know there was an autopsy done on her body. Obviously, I saw the photos. Don't do that. Don't do what I do. Don't be me. But I looked at the photos, and so I know it happened, and there is nothing from that I've seen online that says whether or not she did have kids. But though her stories did change a lot from person to person, one thing that was kind of consistent is she often told many people that she did have kids, and the day that she was murdered, Andrea said that when she got the call from James, she didn't want to go, but she said that she wanted to get the money so that she could send it to her kids. And that's the whole reason she went and met with James and ended up being killed. But that's just what she said. And there are a lot of theories around who she was and what happened to her. And one, you know, that's pretty believed and popular is, of course, the sex trafficking thing, which, just for clarity, I'm not one of those people. I find sometimes with missing persons, unsolved cases, that a lot of times people kind of jump on like a sex trafficking bandwagon. Not that it's bad, it's always a possibility, but I'm not the type of person that immediately tends to think that. I think that there are other things that could happen first, but in this case it does seem to be a reasonable possibility. Like, let's say for example, if she had ran away at a young age and got picked up pretty immediately and got put into this lifestyle and did it for so long that this sort of felt like home to her, I could see her, you know, staying in that and ending up in sex work later. But if that was the case, why would nobody have reported her missing, and why would no one to this day have claimed her? There's also a theory that I think sounds pretty reasonable, that JD was a child in the foster system, and that when she had aged out, she just left. She had no people or place to actually call home anymore, you know? So she left, and she ended up getting into sex work and changed her name because of the illegal things that she was doing. And the reason that nobody has come forward to claim her is that there is no one to claim her. She belongs to no one in that scenario. But as always, I'm very curious what you think. Which theory do you think is most likely her backstory? And do you think she has a family? Do you think she has kids out there? I don't know. I cannot imagine a scenario in a person's life where if her family and people out there who loved her existed, that they wouldn't come forward and claim her. I can't imagine that they exist and would just like abandon her like that. I can't imagine being that alone in the world. It's just so terribly sad to imagine because like I get that she had friends in the life that she was living now, but when it comes to her family, I can only see two options. It's either that she doesn't have one or that the one she has is just not a good one and not worth going back to for her. But anyways, guys, that completes this video. I hope that it was informative and interesting and gave you everything you would want when looking into this case. You know, it's a tricky one. There's so many things to unpack, and I feel like, please don't say anything mean. I feel like I've gotten some stupid comments from stupid people who like to say bad things about people who have lifestyles they don't agree with. And if you have any of that to say when it comes to JD, just fuck right the fuck off, man. Like, every person, first off, if it is just sex work, that's not even a big deal. Mind your business. And she was murdered, regardless of anything, and she deserves to have a name, and she deserves to have people who care about her. And I know there are a lot of people out there in the true crime community that do care about her, so just But I hope that it was interesting and informative and gave you all of the information you would want, and that it was easy to understand. I hope you liked it. Let me know if you did, because, you know, I don't really do a lot of these cases, but I did put up a poll and some of you like them. So if you do, make sure to let me know so I know to do more of them for you. And thank you for just like hanging out and remembering JD with me, because I think she's worth remembering. Please let me know of any cases you would like to see me cover down below, because I have an ongoing list, but anytime anyone leaves me a suggestion, as this video is a perfect example of what I'm going to say next, I always put it down on the list to cover things that you want to see, because I know you're filled with good ideas and good taste, otherwise you would not be here. Of course, if you have not yet, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing the bell, because I put out a new video every single week, and I'd love to hang out with you, specifically you. Yes, you're so cute. Thank you. Be my friend. And if you want to hang out more consistently, make sure to follow me on my other social media. I have Instagram and Twitter, and they're both BRATTERSTEIN, just like my namesake here, and I am on there 24/7. And I just love talking to you guys over there. We get in the DMs, we talk about cases, you guys suggest stuff to me. It's a fun time. It's a fun time over there. And with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That's tight, you're tight, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.